Good evening and welcome. Thank you for attending, and thank you, councillors, for being present and on time. It's 7 o'clock. I'd like to call this regular council meeting of the District of Sechelt to order, February 3rd. And with our call to order, we also remind councillors of any conflict of interest to make a declaration as appropriate if there's any conflict of interest on material that we're dealing with tonight, and so that we will not be adverse of the community charter. And the first item is adoption of the agenda as circulated. Councillor Seegers, seconded by Councillor Lutz. Any additions or deletions, anything from staff for this agenda? No. No additions. All those in favor? Thank you. No appointments and delegations. We do have one proclamation. Each year the humanists ask us to do a proclamation, and I'm always pleased to do this one. Whereas February 12th, 2016 is the anniversary of the birth of Charles Darwin in 1809, and whereas his work has made great contributions to the human understanding of our world and the universe we live in, and whereas the anniversary of Darwin's birthday is an appropriate time on which to reflect and celebrate the importance of scientific advancements to all people, and now therefore, I, Bruce Milne, Mayor, do hereby proclaim that February 12th, 2016 shall be known as Darwin Day in the District of Sechelt. And item 5.1, minutes of the 4 p.m. council meeting, which is just a motion to move from public to in-camera. Receipt and adoption, Councillor Seegers and Councillor Wright second. All those in favor? No errors or omissions in that. Item 5.2, minutes of the 7 p.m. regular council meeting of January 20th, 2016. Motion to receive, Councillor Shanks and Lutz. All those in favor? And can we just look at that for errors or omissions? This was the one, Mr. Vanderwolf, in terms of as a corporate officer, this is where I noticed a couple of anomalies, and I'm just not sure how that works. And one of them would be, for example, on page 16 of our agenda and page 11 of the planning notes, resolution number 2301. And this is just in terms of process. When we're going through the planning minutes, council approved the recommendation that council approve a development variance permit for a sign for the IGA signage for the two tall signs, size and lettering as designed. And that seems to be in contradiction to what we also did on page 5, which was to approve in the material of carved wood. So I was just surprised that at one stage we seemed to approve, planning committee recommended to council that we approve something. We did that on page 5. And then a little later, we changed it. I don't know if we do that often.
It may have had to do with there being a delegation and then a change of council's opinion following that. I'm trying to recall. I think that's what it probably is.
I'll look at it afterwards, and I was just interested that procedurally we would adopt the recommendations and then deal with them differently later. Any errors or omissions that we actually need to change, Councillor Seegers?
Thank you. On bottom page 12, recommendation number 8. It says flag the cold weather shelter to determine if they still require the $10,000. I don't recall that being the conversation. I recall it was that we wanted to ensure the funds can be used as indicated in their application as requested, or if their application needed to be revised. Right? I mean, they need the money. We know they can definitely use the money. That's not an issue there.
I think I can understand why staff wrote that up the way, because there was a number of those things expressed, including just do they meet, and then again at the end of the meeting somebody spoke to it. So it was to determine if they required the money as per their application. I guess
Yes,
is
that would
what we
work,
add,
yeah.
as per their application. Or as per the terms of their application. Any other?
I have one more.
Thank you, Councillor Seegers.
Let me find it. Top of page 20. Councillor Lutz has been assigned vice chair due to the rotation of Sechelt Council representative. I think it's vice chair of a committee, is it not? Not vice chair of the SCRD board, right? That's everything.
Yeah, and there was a slight error on page 19 of our page 14 of the report on liaison activities. Councillor Inkster says where he and staff answered questions. I'm quite sure staff didn't attend that meeting with you. There was some follow-up where you got some assistance from staff, but it says you attended the East Porpoise Bay Association where he and staff answered questions. So.
Yeah, no.
No, staff weren't there, so let's just cross that out.
Yeah, there was Mr. Vance, I think it was Mr. Vance answered some questions
After
by
the
email,
after the fact.
upon my request,
Yep.
for clarification.
Yep. So. Any other errors or omissions? All those in favor of adoption? That's carried as amended. And any business arising from those minutes? Councillor Seegers?
Thank you. On page 11, recommendation number 18, Green Municipal Fund. So we have indicated that we're directing staff to apply for a grant from FCM. And I know that you will be traveling out there this week to accept an award on behalf of us with at GMF. I do know also that we've signed a contract for some funding with them for a biochar, and I'd just like staff to make you and perhaps council aware of our contractual obligations underneath that contract, so that when you go out there and meet with them, you're aware of that.
That would be very wise, because I'm certainly not aware of any contract that we've signed on biochar.
Yeah, it was signed in 2014.
Staff will have to look into that as well. And we'll report to everyone when we hear about that. Councillor Inkster.
Yeah, perhaps you may also have the opportunity. Sure.
He just has to speak to it.
I'll speak to it then, yeah. I'm hoping then that maybe you'll have other opportunities to talk about some funding issues when you go east, because we're also talking about a couple today in reference to the previous comment. But I also wanted to ask in reference to an earlier comment also about vice chair of a committee, I'm wondering if the mayor has had an opportunity to ask the chair just in conversation or in passing, if in fact Seashell will never, because of the rotating nature, will never have a chair of a committee at the regional district for the next 3 years. So I'm hoping that policy changes.
I haven't directly addressed it with Chair Knorr yet, though I've had discussions with the representative from Gibson's, the director, and it seems that there are some members of the board who don't understand what a federation is and what equality is. So we're going to have that conversation. Very much so. I've heard that some think that municipal directors should never be chairing committees at the regional board. So I want to follow up on all of that.
Should never be, even when it's infrastructure, but it includes water, which we contribute greatly to and take water from. Okay.
Apparently.
Okay.
Any other business arising? I have one, which was recommendation 19, just the next one on Green Municipal Fund, where, again, it's coming from planning, I think. And it's a budget, and the reason I'm surprised is that it's a resolution for budget, and we're right in the middle of budget. And I was surprised that it came through planning and then to council like that. And I wondered then, is the budget now already have that amount in its 2016 budget for a sustainability plan? Seemed like an unusual, I don't know if that's best practices. One-offs coming from various committees that support various initiatives that aren't looked at in the comprehensive approach. Just wanted to flag it. Any other business arising? There being none, let's move to committee recommendations from 7.1, Planning and Community Development Committee recommendations. First, for receipt, Councillor Shanks, thank you, and Councillor Wright. All those in favor of receipt. And endorsement of the recommendations, any that we need to take out? Councillor Seegers?
Number 19.
Okay. What about number 7? Councillor Wright?
Thank you, Your Worship. Could we pull number 7? And just a comment on the attendance at this particular meeting. Were you not present at this particular meeting at the table?
I actually did sit at the table.
Could we have the minutes reflect the fact that you were there? I know you're ex officio and you don't have to attend them, but you were at that particular meeting.
That's a good note to. Mm-hmm. Present,
Thank you.
Present but no voice. I was very quiet. Okay, having pulled out 7 and 19, motion to endorse support recommendations 1 through 6 and 8 through 18. Councillor Seegers and Councillor Inkster. Any discussion of those? All those in favor? That's carried. And moving then to recommendation 7, which is the Clayton Family Lands OCP amendment rezoning for seniors living complex. And I suspect it was the long list of the registration of a development agreement that secures that might need some discussion. Councillor Wright can begin.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. I have a couple of questions, 3 questions in particular. Every time we see this list of items, it always seems to be changing. And do we have a standard list of items that we are looking to developers to provide for us in lieu? Or do we make this up as we go along each time? It seems to me every time the list comes to us, it's all over the place, and I don't see any standardization.
And perhaps staff could answer that.
Mayor and Council, these are somewhat unique in that each application has its own qualities, characteristics, and requirements, but a lot of these are common to most applications, but the ones that are unique to this application because of the application and the situation.
Follow up on that, Councillor Wright? Oh, sorry.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. Well, then, item number H, the development of an unpaved alternate access. Now, I understand that you want an unpaved access so that you can put sewer in, but shouldn't we be getting cash in lieu? Because at some point in time, we're going to have to pave that. And in light of the budget discussions that we've been having in the last few days around paving, it's not going to be that easy to find the money to pave that particular road.
My understanding is it's for fire access during the construction period and emergency access, during construction period.
So will it be paved at the end?
No. I think it'll be constructed next phase.
At what point in time, where are we going to get the money to pave it from?
We will secure that at the second phase of this development.
Thank you.
Yes.
And I have one other one on L, the designation of one car share parking space. And I don't have any trouble with that. It's the next part is the contribution of $100 per unit to the provision of a car share vehicle. It would seem to me that we're starting to meddle in the operation of how a building will function when we start dictating that people who have units in this building are now going to contribute to a car share. That somehow that seems to me that we're dictating what a business is going to do, and I'm not sure that we want to do that. And we're contributing to a company, although it may be nonprofit. I suspect somebody's taking a salary out of that company.
Mayor and Council, this also provides or allows for a reduction in the amount of parking provided by providing a car share vehicle.
So there's two sides to that.
Yes.
How many, I wondered when I read that, I wondered how many units there were.
116.
And I would have thought your comments on operations would have been more directed to the next one, M, on the provision of a shuttle bus. But counts. Oh yes, it was removed later.
Yes, it is removed. You did ask the question previously if it could be considered an amenity, and no, but it can be considered as a condition of zoning.
Condition of zoning.
Yes.
Councillor Seegers.
Thank you. Further to Councillor Wright's comment about, how does staff come up with these? I just want to I'd like to ensure that as council and community that we see that there's equity between the developments so that we can, we and the community can see that they're all being treated equally. Okay, thank you.
And just further on that, I'm really keen on us developing a common file on what the community values for community amenities, and so that it's not left to too much discretion or negotiation. I'm not sure why we would prioritize transportation issues, in this case cars or car shares, as opposed to other kinds of issues, or sometimes it might be daycare or whatever. I'd just like us to formalize that so the council is really clear and that community values are always the easily identified thing. And then that may also let us work towards, if we may decide it's car shares, and then work towards having that expanded in numerous buildings so we'd actually have a car share system, or whatever it might be. Any other discussion of recommendation number 7? I'll look for somebody to move it. First, Councillor Lutz Shanks. Any further discussion or amendments? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much for that. And then we move to item 19. And ask somebody to move it so it's on the floor. Councillor Lutz, Councillor Wright. Councillor Seegers.
Thank you. I think when this originally came to us, there was an understanding on the part of staff that the agreement actually expired December 31st, 2015. Now that we've got the contract in front of us, it actually expires December 31st, 2016. So I don't know if we are looking to move this forward at this time.
Yes, and I think Mr. Vanderwolf would like to speak to that.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, the contract has an internal inconsistency. It says that it should run from January 1st, 11 to December 31st of 16, and then it says it's a 5-year contract. And it's either one or the other, and it's either a 5-year contract or a 6-year contract. And the people at the Visitor Information Center contacted us last year and said that, you know, their reading of it is that it's a 5-year contract and it's now coming due at the end of last year, which is why I brought it forward. Yes, you can read it both ways because it is in error. There's an internal inconsistency.
So it's either got another year to run or it's expired and they're working without a contract.
Exactly.
That's not good contract management. Councillor Inkster.
Yeah, I don't really know what happened there, but I think that if we look at the historical nature of this contract and determine the historical time span in which it's been a contract, then I think they're 5-year contracts.
Which means there's another year to go.
Well, no, if the original beginning to the contract was 2011, January 1, then that would be 5 years ending January 1 this year. That's a 5-year contract. And if the standard was a 5-year contract, I think we can assume that it's a 5-year contract to be consistent.
I'm not sure we can assume anything
Yeah,
if the
well, I
contract says
understand.
2 things.
Yeah.
What's your reading of that, actually?
Well, it comes down to what both parties agree, and because it said it's a 5-year contract with an option for another 5-year renewal, then they were saying it's 5 years, and we agreed it's 5 years, and someone just wrote the dates wrong because they were going from the beginning of 1 year to the end of another year, and so to my reading of it, the dates are wrong.
Okay.
But you could also read it that it should be a 6-year contract, and you wouldn't be completely wrong.
Okay. Councillor Lutz.
I would think that we would be smart to clean the contract up and get the dates right with the start for this year.
Okay. The motion in front of us, I want to know if anyone would like to move the recommendation, which is that council approve the Sechelt Visitor Center Renewal Agreement for a 5-year term. And we'll get the dates right when we do it, if we do it. Councillor Wright would move that, seconded by Councillor Mueller. Discussion, Councillor Seegers.
Thank you. At the beginning of the contract, and we did ask for this to come back so that we could actually look at the contract, it indicated that the Community Service Society had been awarded the contract. So I wasn't around when this happened, but it sounds like it went out for tender or RFP or something. And I'm wondering if rather than just awarding it as per policy with the district, it should actually go out for tender or RFP and see who is coming forward.
Councillor Inkster.
So we've spoken about this a couple of times, and historically, if we go back a number of years ago, and it came up for renewal, there was a public process in which the community services, who had done a good job over the last number of years, went through a process with anyone else who wanted to put forward an application, and they were re-awarded the contract. But at that point, it was a public process. I think one other organization applied at the same time, and staff devised, and it would be available in our system, staff devised a point process in order to determine who would be the successful applicant. So I try to be consistent, and that's what I was comfortable with a number of years ago and recommended to be fair, and that's where I'm comfortable again in terms of just being, I'm not sure why I would change my view on that based on the fact that it had happened a number of years ago. There was a short process. I thought it was a clear and transparent process, and the successful applicant who had done the best job or could demonstrate the best job being done was given the contract for another 5 years. So that's where I am.
So if I can figure out where you are,
Yeah.
it would be that you're recommending a 1-year renewal or some renewal to rationalize what's existing and then have an RFP, or are you recommending that the contract that's in place has already expired and we have an RFP while it's expired in the midst of a season, or I couldn't quite follow. I think you were arguing in favor of an RFP.
We've done it before.
Yeah.
I
So
think
you'd
we
like to
should
do it
look at
again?
doing it again. If we need clarity on the process, we should look at the previous processes done. Maybe it came to us earlier at that point. I don't know historically on that point that it occurred. Maybe it came earlier, but if in fact we have to put a 1-year extension in place to carry out that process, then perhaps we have to because of the lateness of the renewal piece.
My concern here is that it did come in August, and that's internal problems that have kept it from being dealt with in December. I'm also wondering what the word renewal means if in a contract, if it doesn't mean renewal on good service. So if everyone was happy with the service and the contract calls for renewal, then I would think they'd have some contractual obligation to actually renew, as opposed to say it's a 5-year contract that's terminated. I'm not adverse to, I don't know if we actually even have a policy on this. Contract manager don't usually go past 5 years, and they would normally come back for something like that. So, and I'm happy with the. We haven't heard anything but good things. The other concern I'd have with going for an RFP right now, quite frankly, is that in the last 4 months, there's been so much public discussion and a call by councillors to have particular information, including financial statements, in public in order, and that kind of makes an unfair playing field for the one group that's been under consideration. All of their information, everything they've been doing, and their terms have been part of our public process and made public, and that's doesn't seem to be a fair way to deal with any other groups that might want to come forward. They're going to have I mean, if that was a business, they'd just go nuts on us in terms of the apparent conflict and the lack of confidentiality. And that was councillors that asked for that material to come forward. So does staff have any help on this one? In terms of if we did go to an RFP, is there a policy statement on that? And if we didn't, could we just extend it for 1 year while we work that out?
Well, certainly our purchasing policy requires that purchase of goods and services be done by tender or by proposal. But in this case, the contract that was entered into did allow for an option to renew. So it's very clear that that was envisaged at the time. As long as both parties agreed to renew it, it could be renewed. If you're looking for a 1 year during which to do an RFP, then you could go back and read the contract in the context that it's a 6-year contract, not a 5-year, although both parties don't agree with that. I would suggest if both parties don't agree with that kind of reading of it, it's problematic. There's an internal problem, mistake in the wording of the contract, and if you disagree on it, then it's not as easy as that. You couldn't just invoke it unilaterally.
Thanks. Yeah, we shouldn't be doing it unilaterally.
No.
Well, I'll look to council then, and we have a motion in front of us, which is simply to renew it based on the existing contract and the willingness of both parties. Though 2 councillors have said they're not adverse to an RFP under some circumstances. Let's just see where the question lies. All those in favor of the recommendation? Any opposed? Okay, that's carried. And we will be approving the Seashell Visitor Center Renewal Agreement for a 5-year term, and we'll get the dates right, and they will start and end in the same month, or not the same month, exactly one day different. January 1st, 2016 to December 31st of a later date.
5 years hence.
Yeah, 5 years hence.
Yeah.
And
We do the contract well.
And probably think about that option to renew in terms of what it means and whether it should be there, and if it's consistent with our attempts to put a more rigorous tendering in place. No, I was going to recognize you because your light was on. Summary of recommendations from Public Works Parks of Wednesday, January 27th. All those in favor of receipt, Councillor Wright and Councillor Lutz. Any errors or omissions? And then we have 8 recommendations. Motion to endorse or recommend Councillor Seegers, seconded by Councillor Lutz. None of them being pulled out. All those in favor? Those are carried.
Can I ask a business arising?
A business arising, which might be on recommendation number 8.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Thanks for reading my mind. I had mentioned to Councillor Lutz at the time that this obviously would have to go through, I believe it's in Area B. It's probably been confirmed, and this would have to probably go perhaps now formally from us to the regional district and or whoever names things in Canada. I think Mr. Vanderwerf said that there was a body that does that.
It's called the BC Geographic Place Names. They don't have to go through anyone else. We can
Yes.
do it ourselves. A citizen can make suggestions. There is no geographic name to this lake. I looked it up.
Okay, good. So what about
So
the
it's-
regional district?
It's unnamed and
Yeah.
it's in common parlance, but it's not named by the BC Geographic Place Names.
Oh,
So that might mean it's fairly wide open. I think it might be a courtesy to send it to the SCRD.
and I was wondering then, that having been said, if Councillor Lutz has been able to talk about that. I mean, I don't know if that committee that would talk about that has come up, but maybe it will.
Well, why don't we just pass it on, Councillor
We are,
Lutz?
yeah.
I had a very informal discussion with the chair, and he had a few questions which the RD will investigate. Part of it was, where did the name come from? And if the family who it's been suggested it be named after would have any objections. So those conversations are yet to be had.
Do you want to leave it at that as it works its way, or do you want to make it more formal? Just,
Okay, so the what Councillor Lutz is telling me is that she will be following up in order to determine whether those questions were answered and whether the family has any objection to it, and what was the other one? Oh, sorry. Where the
If
name
anyone
originally came
knows,
from? Yeah, from a citizen in Area B, I believe was the idea. Is that what you meant?
no, she meant Wormy Lake.
Oh, Wormy. Oh,
Where did Wormy come from?
I could probably answer that. What was in the lake, yeah.
But we'll leave it with staff. then,
Yeah,
and
okay.
Councillor Lutz. Okay. Bylaws, item 8.1, District of Sechelt Property Maintenance Bylaw. And this is to deal with nuisance odors. And it's for first, second, and third readings. I'll look for somebody to move first reading of the District of Sechelt Property Maintenance Bylaw number 522-1, 2016, which is a bylaw to amend Property Maintenance Bylaw number 522, 2012. Councillor Shanks moved, and seconded by Councillor Seegers. All those in favor of first reading? And second reading of property maintenance bylaw number 522-1, 2016. Councillor Seegers, Councillor Shanks. Any discussion? We're all aware of what it's for. All in favor? Oh, sorry, I didn't see that vote. I do recognize Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Your Worship. First of all, thank you to the staff for bringing this forward. I'm not sure how we're going to measure the odor to know if somebody's in violation of the bylaw. That's the first question I have. And the next question is, and if they are, what are our options?
Thank you, Worship. No, there is no proposed method of measuring in this case. It's complaint-based, so if someone puts in a complaint, then the bylaw enforcement staff will go if it seems reasonable, and I think the word is even used in the bylaw drafting, reasonable. If it seems that the complaint is reasonable, then that will be brought to the attention of the originator, if the originator can be determined. That's another difficulty with it. But yes, it's very subjective, and that's one of the reasons it wasn't part of the bylaw before now. But the enforcement staff indicate that they don't think it's going to be a problem with enforcing it. So.
It actually is as normal as opposed to reasonable, which I wasn't sure had quite the same context, but you can measure odors. So we could get, if it became an issue, we could get devices that would do that. Any further discussion at second reading? All those in favor of second reading? That's carried. And third reading of bylaw, property maintenance bylaw number 522-1, 2016 is moved by Councillor Seegers and Councillor Shanks. All those in favor of third reading? That's carried, and that will come back. And under business items, we have, under the category of better late than never, report and a contract on the Salish Soils sublease Dusty Road site. And this is brought forward. First, a motion to receive. Thank you, Councillor Seegers and Councillor Shanks. All those in favor? And again, Mr. Vanderwolf, you seem to be busy tonight. Would you like to speak to this one?
Thank you, Worship. This is an item which has been before Council before. Council approved the 5-month extension and then directed the interim CAO to arrive at a negotiated amount, and he did do so fairly recently, and that's why it did take a while for that negotiation, and that's why this is here almost too late, as you indicated, but better late than never. There will have to be a public notice for this disposition of land, and there also has to be approval because it's a Crown lease. So there's a bit of legwork, yes, to be done, but at least we have a contract price in place.
Yes, and it will expire on March 31st. Councillor Seegers, I think, first, and then Councillor Wright.
I think it's...
Reverse. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Your Worship. On Article 7.1A on page 48, at the middle statement, it says, sublease to be paid and such failure continues for 90, and then in brackets it says 30 consecutive business days. I'm not sure which one it is, but you can figure out which one it is and make sure that that's looked after. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Councillor Seegers.
Thank you. Given the date on this, have we been actually receiving payment on this? And will we have everything done before it actually expires? Or does it need to be extended?
It will not be
No,
extended.
it will not be extended, no.
Manager of Financial Services.
We have invoiced them, but I'm not sure if we've actually received the amounts.
And that's not just to clarify, when you have a $25 million budget, a $750 a month coming in may or may not be noticed by staff unless it's specifically looked looked at. It is always in reconciliation, of course, but in terms of a question out of the blue. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Your Worship. In the report, it says that there is no renewal of this particular lease, but I may have missed it. I didn't see a no renewal clause within the lease. Is there one?
No, there was to be no renewal. That was council's direction, and so there's no renewal clause in the agreement. That's already understood.
Okay. I think we need a motion to support this contract. We've received it. We've received a report. Do we have to do anything else? Okay.
Yeah.
Where is recommendation 2? That's what I'm.
If council wasn't happy with any of the provisions contained herein, you could give me direction, but otherwise no. I mean, the direction is to enter into an agreement with them, and it's here.
It's okay. What's happened is that you put your recommendations at the end of your report, and I didn't get there. So we do have recommendation 2, that the attached sublease of the Dusty Road site to Salish Soils be approved for execution by the district. Moved by Councillor Shanks, Councillor Seegers. All those in favor? That's carried. Thanks. That was my fault. I just wasn't turning the pages. And item 10.2, following on a decision a little earlier. This is just for information. Thanks. Moved receipt for information, seconded by Councillor Lutz. All those in favor? Councillors' reports. I'll start on the left with Councillor Mueller.
Thank you, Worship. Since our past meeting, like many councillors, I've spent the time getting acquainted with our new CAO, Tim Palmer. This has included some updates and meetings related to our work on the Personnel Committee and ACTEV, as well as some other conversations around the lay of the land, and just to offer a welcome. Other than that, what has been keeping me most busy is budget discussions with staff and council, trying to get our priorities in order, and just set out exactly what it is we're going to do, not only in this year, but in the other 2 years left in our term. So, yeah, very much looking forward to the year ahead, and just getting started. Thanks.
Thank you. And Councillor Lutz.
Thank you. I attended a meeting with the school district last week, public engagement around facilities, how they're used now and going into the future. There's a lot of talk around need for more shared and collaborative efforts in the community. Things like libraries and rec center exchanges, uses. Not sure what will come out of that, but I'll watch for the report on it. I also took part in the last conference call with the House Sound Pulp and Paper Working Group. And unfortunately, neither the representative for House Sound Pulp and Paper or the representative for the union were on the line. So we were not given any up-to-date numbers on the final layoffs, who's taken up some of the offered training, who's been hired and where, as far as who are leaving our community. So we've asked that that be put together and sent to all of us so that we'll have a final wrap-up report. The Seashell Regional Hospital Board chose their chair and vice chair, and the chair will be Frank Morrow and the vice chair, Gary Knorr. And been very busy here at the district with preparations around our budget and workshops, those kinds of things that are happening to be able to move forward on that. So it's been a fairly busy time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Shanks.
Thank you, Your Worship. I won't mention those meetings that others have attended. I will mention that January the 28th, Councillor Seegers and myself and members of the library and staff members had a library building committee meeting, and we have a meeting in 2 weeks' time to come up with the terms of reference for that particular committee and moving forward, and hopefully have something in the next few months in terms of the direction of the library and the municipal offices for council's consideration. February the 25th is the SDBA annual general meeting, and as I was around 30 years ago, they've asked me to produce some speaking notes in terms of what things were like back in 1986. So I'll be delivering that little speech on February the 25th. That's all I have.
Thank you. Look forward to that. And Councillor Inkster.
Just make note of the
February
AGM.
25th.
Yeah. And I'm glad I know that Mr. Palmer's been busy, and it was referenced that he just got here. I'm glad he's still here. It's lots of work, very busy. And Councillor Shanks, I'm sure you'll talk about either the 4 stop signs or the 1 red flashing light in 1986 in Seashell, and all the street lights that we now have. The couple of weeks have been really busy, as they are at the beginning of the year, talking about budget. I caught the tail end of the RD budget presentation. A lot of the material they passed on to councillors was almost like a LGLA. This this is your regional district information, but many of us know what they are. I think the new council members who've been over there for a number of weeks know very clearly who they are and what they do. But I was glad to see in their budget figures that they don't see a large increase in their requisition over the next number of years. And Councillor Lutz may be able to correct me, being involved in budget, if I've read that incorrectly, those figures going forward. But that's good to see, because we always know what the rec facilities end up needing for subsidies every year. So let's hope it stays steady. We've also been very involved, all of us, in our Seashell budget meetings. We've had a number of them. We have more, and they've been long meetings in order to determine our capital and operating expenditures. And I always wonder, and I'll say this every time we do this, is zero tax increase. Some people like it, but I don't know how sustainable it is. So going forward, I hope we bite into that. I also wanted to mention the SDBA Around the Town event that a number of us were at, that I think it was one of the first opportunities the mayor had to speak to a small group. We'll call it a coffee small group speaking and answering questions. When I go to those, and I'd love to see the chamber do this as well, is recognize not only new businesses, not only existing businesses, but new businesses and new business people. They do a very good job of that, and I would love to see, I'll always encourage them to do more, and I hope that the chamber does that when they do their events, is recognize all the new businesses and new business people in town, because that contributes to the vibrancy of our downtown, but also contributes to the vibrancy of our entire community. So another good event put on by them, and that's why I look forward to the AGM, and I wrote it down. Thank you.
Thank you for that report. And Councillor Wright.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. Attended a number of meetings at the SCRD, corporate services, planning services, community services, financial workshop, budget committee meeting, and their board meeting. Also attended the Youth Advisory Committee meeting, of course, our own planning department meeting and Public Works Finance Committee. Attended the Downtown Business Association around town. Attended the Learning Spaces with School District 46. And today had a meeting with our CAO regarding the Personnel Committee and some of the upcoming hires. And lastly, had a meeting with KD Airlines. And for those of you who know me, my initials are KD. Has nothing to do with me. This is an airline out of Craft. From the island. Our CAO was also present, And this particular airline is, they fly out of South Terminal, among other places, and they're looking for a letter of authorization to be able to come into Seashell. So in the next few weeks, I'm sure that we'll see a report from the administration bringing some sort of a recommendation forward to us, and we'll have some thought to give to that. I guess the one thing about this particular airline is it is small, and they subscribe to the philosophy that let's try it and see if we have enough people to make it pay for itself, rather than let's build it and see if they will come. So I appreciate that. In terms of improvements to the airport, there were no improvements that they were asking for, so which is kind of nice. So that's the end of my report. Thank you.
That's very encouraging. Thank you for that. Councillor Seegers.
Thank you. Sorry, frog in my throat. I had the opportunity to attend a conference in Vancouver on January 21st, 22nd. It was called Compassionate Leadership. I was invited by the presenter to be there, and it was an opportunity to be with CEOs from various companies around the world. Some, for example, one of the major utilities in Saskatchewan, their CEO was there, was a CEO from one in Jamaica, companies down in the US. So it was very interactive. It was an interesting conference, and they're looking to see how they can continue that and carry it forward. I attended the seniors planning table meeting, and I think a number of us were at the SCRD Finance Information Workshop. They came and gave council a look at, more of an informal kind of look at their finances. Councillor Shanks mentioned the building committee meeting. I also attended a couple of the Innovation Island workshops that were put on here locally. While they're touted as being tech focused, it's actually innovation and manufacturing as well that are represented there. There was actually one of the ladies who's attended all of the sessions is actually raising heritage chickens here on the Sunshine Coast. So not tech, but looking at how all of this pertains to her. So when this information gets out to the public, I think we need to ensure that it's not just people thinking it's related to computers or technology and such. It's quite interesting to see the interaction and the information that comes out. Other than that, lots of meetings on budget. That's everything. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you very much for the reminder that Innovations Island is much broader than just the high-tech industry. It's how other businesses interact in the global world as well, and how they can use that. That's really useful. I wanted to take a moment to use my council report to read 2 emails that I got this week. And I do it in the context, we get a lot of emails all the time. And I noticed this week a couple of patterns where we get critical emails and we get those that aren't quite so critical. And sometimes when one comes through that's supportive, we finally say, oh, good. And councillors will write back to that person and say, thank you for your email. And we have to always make sure that that's clearly balanced, and that emails we get are always only from one person and one perspective. Even if we get 100 of them from one person, it's still only from one person, and not to overreact to that, or overreact to the one that finally comes in that counters the other. So 2 emails, I'll try not to comment. They're both on the same topic, which is me going to Ottawa. Mayor Milne, and I won't tell you where they're from, but they're both from ladies in our community. Mayor Milne, I read with great interest the article in this week's Coast Reporter where you will be accepting an award in the nation's capital for something that you had no part in. How dare you go and make a mockery of all the hard work done by John Henderson and the previous council? 4 exclamation marks. Now, perhaps it is time to find some honor and do the right thing. Send the man who brought our innovative sewage treatment plant to fruition, not someone who never wanted it, condemned the project, and thinks making jokes and embarrassing Sechelt in our nation's capital is the honorable and right thing to do. I personally am ashamed that you will be representing me under such false pretenses. Mayor Milne, just heard about your trip to Ottawa. Glad you're going rather than Mr. Henderson. Even though we are stuck with this great wastewater treatment plant, all done with in-camera secret meetings, I still contend that it was impractical and imprudently done by locating it in the wrong place at a price we can't afford, which is a direct result of your predecessor and insulting to the previous council who worked hard to acquire Lot L. Also insulting to taxpayers whose public concerns were ignored. Henderson's, that's in capitals, and his cohorts had their own private agenda. This had a strong scent of dictatorship. The Auditor General's report that was so damning must be relayed to other communities. I ask you to please speak strongly to these issues during your address. I fail to see pride in displaying a sewage plant in the middle of town in a residential area. It is a blessing to have the benefits of the award for which we should be thankful, but sadly it is tainted by the methodology and deceptions that were used to create it. Thank you for your hard work and good luck. Hopefully you'll stick around for another term after this. I will, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, once elected as mayor, I will be representing the district of Seashell in official capacities in various times, and I will do my best not to have any false pretenses and to do it with some dignity and honor. SCRD report.
Thank you. I have printed out a copy of my report because it's quite lengthy and there are some at the back of the room. But I want to touch on a couple of issues. Because we are in the midst of budget preparation, there's been a lot of presentations come forward from the libraries, museums, Pender Harbour Health Clinic, electoral areas around their economic development. Those have been moved forward to the first round of budgeting. There have also been some delegations come before us that we have received but not acted on, and those delegations were from Pender Harbour Heritage Society, the Victims Services, Pender Harbour, an association for containment of the Japanese knotweed. Those are just some of the things that will be happening over the next few weeks. I want to also report that we received from the Recreation Department a report around BC Ferry's youth travel vouchers and the total reduced fares that have been paid out in the last year. $42,379. And that has cost the regional district approximately $500 in paper and printing costs to administer it. The largest recipients, a little over $13,000 to the Minor Hockey Association and over $12,000 to Minor Soccer. The lowest amount paid out to any group was to the junior golf, $95. So it's been a very successful program and it will carry on. We've asked to look at what ways we could assist non-school groups for arts or culture, and we're having difficulty seeing how to organize that one, but I haven't given up on it. And also would like to report that the RD has received 3 grants for building condition assessments, almost $9,000 to assess recreation, the recreation facilities, $4,200 for community halls, and $2,800 for the Mason Road Works Yard. So those will really be helpful in their assessments. I'll leave it at that. Well, no, I'll add the fact that a resolution came forward from directors asking that the district, the regional district, pay a per diem, travel, housing, registration, and expenses for directors to attend a Columbia Institute forum at Harrison Hot Springs. It's 1 night and 2 days in April. It was moved, seconded, and carried, but 2 opposed, myself and Director White. And I have to say that this is something I will continue to question, is these kinds of expenses. That's my report.
Thank you very much for that report, and at some time we'll have discussion on what Mayor Rob Ford of Toronto called the gravy train at the SCRD. Item 12.1 is council correspondence, a motion for receipt. Councillor Seegers, thank you, and Councillor Lutz. All those in favor? And there's some action on the 1.4, the letter from the farmer's market, John Bell. His final paragraph is actually a request that we write to the Minister of Health to continue the market nutrition coupon. So I wondered if, I think that's probably a reasonable thing to do. Councillor Inkster would make that motion, and Councillor Lutz. All those in favor? And action from 2.1. Councillor Inkster?
Yeah, I was just wondering.
Sorry.
Just wondering in 2.1, I had a question about 1.2, but I'll go to 2.1 because we're on that now. Will there be a process by which we will be providing either individually or as a district or as a council comments to that particular, the world-class spill response regime? They call it world-class, so I guess we need to endeavor to make sure it is such. And so,
Well, it looks like in their second paragraph that they will be going into an engagement process.
Okay.
Which would give us an opportunity. They do encourage us to provide detailed comments. I'm not sure who on staff would be able to do that. Okay. Certainly councillors should be encouraged.
Yeah.
Any other comments on that? Councillor Mueller?
Yeah, I saw that one as well, and it raised a flag for me. We've now back the previous resolution that we brought to AVICC as well as UBCM dealt with this issue, and it's perhaps in response to that resolution that this in part came about. So it seems really quite pertinent to me that this council would provide some comment to that and be actively involved in the process, not only because we've indicated throughout the year that it's important, but also because, as I said in previous statements, we're bordered on 4 sides by the ocean, and it really has a huge impact on our district. So,
okay, what I notice is that they do say they'll provide us or me with another notice just prior to the commencement of our formal engagement. So when we get that notice on their formal engagement, I'll ensure that it's followed up and that we have a presence.
Oh, good.
Either a large contingent or whatever, but that also means we'll have to read the report and provide comments.
Yeah.
But that's good. So we'll watch that, and when they provide notice, we'll make sure that council's apprised.
Okay.
And item 2.2, registration. Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Seegers.
Sorry, it was another one of the pieces in here. The Cumberland Trails Agreement finalized and the documentation that goes with that. I wonder if we could get staff just to forward that on to the Sunshine Coast Trail Society. I think there's some information in there that would be...
Which item are you looking at?
It's the last one in the... It's part of the AVICC thing, I think.
Yes, yeah.
But just the last component of that, because it's got an agreement in there, and they're looking at some innovative ways to work with lumber companies, et cetera, too, like some of the private lumber companies.
Okay.
Just might give them some information too, and some guidelines to follow when they're looking at putting some of these agreements together.
And they're often with the regional district, so I hope the regional district sees that as well. And Councillor Inkster, you had another item.
Yeah, I was just, I was glad that we write letters in support of some of the newer existing initiatives that the upper levels of government who have more power than us are taking to deal with some of the environmental challenges. And I was hoping that if we write more letters that we identify some of the projects we've done and some of the initiatives we've taken in the district of Seashell, sort of a flag waving exercise to talk about what we're doing on the Sunshine Coast to preserve our environment, and what we would love to see some modeling being done in other levels of government.
Like the Waste Resource Center.
As an example.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. And just fresh, I guess, because of the water coming out the other side that can be reused for whatever. But there's a number of other things we have done, including our sustainability plan.
Thank you for that. And the only other thing on the AVICC is to make sure you complete your registrations and get those in. Any other items in correspondence? Councillor Wright.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. Are we going to be thinking about proposing anybody for nomination for the executive of AVICC?
We certainly will if somebody on council gives us a nod. And I think that's a good idea. I think we should, if people have the time or inclination. And we should also be thinking of resolutions. Yeah. That's the main, as important, if we think there are some. So, and I think councillors should take seriously the opportunity to serve on AVICC. It would broaden the perspective. So, nothing else on correspondence. I'll look for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Seegers and Councillor Mueller, all those in favor? We're all in favor. Public questions and answer period. Pam.
Oil pipelines, but protecting our coast.
Yeah.
On the news the other night, you were talking about that. And there's absolutely no way to prove that anything is safe until you have a spill. That's when you find out how world class they are. So just so that you don't mistake the idea of think that there is any kind of proven world class method of cleaning up or responding to any kind of spill or pollution of any kind.
No. Anything else? Sue, and then Katie.
I have a question for Mike Van, for the planning department. Do we have any dates for First Street, at least for public hearings for the stadium development application past First Street?
I can follow up with that with you tomorrow. I was out of the office today. I believe we were setting it up, so.
And Ms. Capel.
I just was listening very closely to your reports of the various council members at the meeting. Sorry not to hear the words lawn bowling come out of anybody's mouth. Since I did make a delegation, I'm happy to come and make a delegation quite often if you'd like me to, but I don't want to be annoying and I don't want to use up your time. You know what I want, and I would like to hear it coming sometimes in our discussions of what you're doing.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you very much for being here. We'll call it a night, 10 after 8. Well, now we could have our